So this afternoon I took a nap. I got into my vehicle after that nap, turned the key, vehicle started, drove down some roads that years ago people planned and laid down and worked diligently on forming pathways through the city. Got here safely, came to a nice warm building, been able to sit comfortably and to enjoy worshiping together. Paying attention, as Mike said just a moment ago, paying attention to things to be grateful for is something that I believe is a choice that we're supposed to make. Tonight we're going to be looking at a continuation of what we started this morning when we talked about gratitude and how that attitude is one that we should try to cultivate. That our relationship with God is dependent upon it. That as it was with the Samaritan that had formerly been a leper, that when his leprosy was healed, he felt an immediate need to return and give thanks to the one who gave him the healing. And we emphasize that gratitude is not about the gift that's given to us, but it's about the one who gave the gift. And so when we think about our God being somebody who is steadfast, who is never changing, his steadfast love endures forever, the psalmist does say, enter into his gates with thanksgiving. That when we come into the period of worship, that general call of just worshiping God, even as collectively tonight, to enter into that activity with thanksgiving, not with something that seems to be a burdensome thing. And if your life is anything like most of our lives, then sometimes it's really difficult maybe to enter into our worship assemblies with thanksgiving, because we had to corral the kids. Somebody obviously doesn't have their clothes on yet and is not ready to walk out the door yet, or right when you're about to walk out the door, something happens and it delays you. And you're yelling for everybody to get in the car, let's go, we're going to be late, we got this, we got that, we got this after services, we got to think about getting back home on time to get ready for work tomorrow, and all these different things going through our minds. And then we come in and we say, okay, now let's worship God. And that's difficult because there's so many activities and so many other things going on that we don't slow down to actually take the time to show gratitude. One of the verses that we haven't looked at today is 1 Thessalonians 5 and verse 18. And that's a verse that many of you know already, and is a good one to memorize and to maybe have as a theme verse for this week to think about, where we are told that we are to, in all things, give thanks. That we're to always be thankful in every situation, whatever is going on, to be grateful and to show thanksgiving to our God. And that verse tells us that it's not just a suggestion from God, that it is indeed a command of God. It even says, for this is the will of God for you. And so as Christians, it is God's will that we are always about being thankful and have a gratitude that exudes from our very core. Gratitude, as we defined it, was the practice of actively remembering and expressing the grace and goodness bestowed in our lives. That ingratitude stems from something where we focus on what it is that we lack, whereas gratitude is something that focuses on the things that God has already given and in anticipation of what God is going to give to us. That it's not just the way in which we think, but it's the way in which we act that expresses that gratitude. And that gratitude is central to our relationship to God because of who He is and what He has done for us. So we're going to be continuing with that tonight, especially with the idea of it being a choice that we make. So if you're ready for your three key words, let's see the notebooks this evening. All right. Your three words are intentional, deliberate, and purposeful. Three words that mean basically the same thing. That when we think about being grateful, that should be an intentional thing. Much like it is when you're raising your kids and somebody does something for them, one of the things that you often hear parents say to that child is, say thank you. Tell them thank you. Maybe if it's a family member, give them a hug and tell them how much you appreciate what it was that they did for you or what they gave to you. That's something that when there's an intentional aspect to it, when they get older, you want that to continue. That you've probably seen it before where you'll open the door for someone and that person will walk through the door and never say a word. Maybe not even acknowledge that you held the door open for them. Sometimes it makes you think, maybe I should have closed the door instead. But you do see that a lot. And to me, that's because people aren't noticing as much as we should. So being intentional and being deliberate. Being deliberate has this idea that being deliberate about it means that you are going to do this and you're going to do this for specific people. That I'm deliberately going to make sure that I let people know how much they are appreciated and how much I appreciate them for what they have done. Also, when it's purposeful, A purpose behind it is that idea not just of enhancing our relationship with God, but also with one another. But it's also something that encourages others. Good behavior is something that when it's rewarded is something that's much easier to repeat. Now, we don't reward good behavior just so that people do good things, because people are supposed to do good things because they are good things. But it always helps when a person says thank you, or I appreciate that. And so being very intentional and deliberate and purposeful in our gratitude toward others is a choice. And the reason being is because this choice is not about feelings. Gratitude is not about that. In many situations, we most likely act this way. We wait to see how the outcome of a situation is before we decide whether or not we're grateful for that situation or we're not thankful for that situation. If it turns out the way that we want it to turn out, then yes, we are thankful for that. And we'll express gratitude because of that. But really, gratitude is something that's not based upon that at all. Gratitude is based upon this premise: I will find the good intentionally, purposefully, in every situation, no matter what. Amen. And when you think that way, it can sometimes be overwhelming when you witness it. That over the years that I've been a Christian and preaching and as an elder, that there have been many people that I've seen who have been very, very sick and bound by some very horrible diseases. And even in the midst of that, you will see consistently Christians who express gratitude and thankfulness in the midst of even a situation like that. And it's so very humbling because you know that this situation is dire. This situation may not be able to be changed, and we may be witnessing the last few moments of this individual's life, and yet they are thankful. And they will even say, thank you for sending me a card. Thank you for sending me a text. Thank you for coming to visit me. Thank you for thinking of me. And that's humbling. It's like, why should I be thanked for something that seems so trivial? But again, it's not about the gift, but it's about the one who is giving. It's about the relationship that's formed through gratitude and not just the physical or other types of benefits you may gain from that. Gratitude is a choice that you make to be happy in situations and to be content no matter what the outcome may be. In Psalm 118 and verse 24, this is the day the Lord has made. We will rejoice and be glad in it. This is what choosing to be grateful looks like. It's waking up tomorrow and saying, this is a day that God has given me, and today I will rejoice and I will be glad in this day. Doesn't matter what this day holds or what happens toward the end of this day, the things I encounter along the way. This is a day that God has made. He has blessed me. He has graciously given me another day to open my eyes, draw breath, and I will be glad in this day. I will not be pessimistic. I will not be brought down. I will not be conquered by whatever it is that I meet this day. I will rejoice and be glad in this day that God has given me. Verses like this teach us that gratitude is indeed a choice that we make. It is not waiting to see what the outcome is and then decide how we feel about that outcome. Philippians 4 and verse 6 is another well-known verse that we know that speaks to the same thing when it talks about anxiety, that we're to be anxious for nothing, but in everything, by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. As has been pointed out many times, we can be anxious for nothing and pray about everything, or we can be anxious about everything and pray about nothing. Which most closely defines the life that I'm living? When I'm met with things that cause me to fret and to feel overwhelmed and to feel that burden placed upon me, I do have a choice that I can make. I can let that crush me, or I can pray to God and not be anxious anymore. To decide, I am not going to be anxious about that. It's not easy to do. And as I said this morning, it takes sort of like a factory reset on your brain to get out of that way of thinking and to change it. But it can be done, as we've seen in the scriptures, even as Paul says in Colossians 3. And notice how in this verse, Paul links things like thanksgiving with things like peace. He says here, let the peace of God rule in your hearts, to which you are also called in one body, and be thankful. He's going to talk about thankfulness twice in this passage. Let the word of Christ dwell in you richly in all wisdom, teaching and admonishing one another in psalms and hymns and spiritual songs, singing with grace in your hearts to the Lord. And whatever you do in word or deed, do all in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to God the Father through him. Twice he says something about being thankful and giving thanks. He links it to the idea of God's peace dwelling in us. One of the signs of that peace is that we're going to be singing instead of complaining. We're going to be singing, not the blues, but psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs. And we're doing that with thanksgiving in our hearts to God. Paul is someone who would be well equipped to talk about making this choice, because Paul did make this choice over and over again. That most of our New Testament is filled with Paul's letters, and many of those letters, if not most of those letters, are prison epistles, which means he was writing that letter from prison. And some of them not knowing whether or not he was going to live or die, knowing that he was separated from people that he loved, knowing that there were people out there who were trying to add afflictions to his chains. But when you read through Paul's epistles, what you see over and over again is his joy, is his gratefulness, is his appreciation, is his love. And you see it throughout the entire letter, that he mentions brethren by name, and he's thankful for them, even as Paul himself is in this situation. That he's grateful for what they have done for him and for others. Even if he himself didn't benefit from it, he's thankful for it. He's grateful to God that he gave him the opportunity not just to preach the gospel, but actually to be jailed because he's preaching the gospel. He's grateful to be considered among those worthy to be killed because of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And he thanks God for it. Because it's not about thanking God for the problem or the situation, so much as it is being grateful to God that you're counted worthy of that relationship you have with him. It's not about what the gift may be. It's about the giver. That's what gratefulness is about. And we can choose. We make the choice every day. When you woke up this morning, what was the choice that you made? Did you think about the choice? Or were you just waiting to see, based upon each situation, what it was that you thought of it? We need to be more intentional, especially when it comes to the idea of being grateful. In Lamentations 3, he talks about all the different hardships and difficulties that may be coming upon the people and all the things that he may face. The book itself is called Lamentations, which means weeping, mourning. It is a book that is talking about sorrow. But even in the midst of this, Jeremiah says this I recall to my mind, therefore I have hope. Through the Lord's mercies we are not consumed, because his compassions fail not. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. That's rising every morning and realizing that God's mercies are great. That yes, things may be hard, but we have not been consumed. As Paul wrote to the Corinthians, we may be hard pressed, but we are not crushed. That there's a great weight and burden that's placed upon each and every one of us every day, and yet God still gives us the strength to make it through it. That's what gratefulness and gratitude looks like, is that God's faithfulness is there every day. As one writer wrote, we are either doing one of two things. We are either whining or we are worshiping. And I believe that that is a very accurate statement. And so what is it for me? Am I one of those who's among the whiners, that every time a situation comes up, a problem exists, I'm whining about it? Am I the kind of person who's always looking for a problem and trying to invent some kind of difficulty? That way I have something to talk about, because I don't know how to talk about good things. Or am I the kind of person who is immediately going to worship to God? I've heard you've heard the expression before that there's two kinds of people. There's the optimist and the pessimist. And the optimist is the person who sees the glass half full, and the pessimist is the one who sees it half empty. I think there's a third group, that somebody took my glass, drank my water, and then broke the glass. That there is absolutely no hope whatsoever. That it does seem that we are a people who are often, and I'm just talking in general here, that are often almost excited about the idea of failure, because we're used to being disappointed, or we're wanting to be disappointed so much that it feels like a warm blanket that we wrap ourselves in. It's, oh, sweet disappointment. I knew this was going to end badly. I told people it was going to end badly. And then when it does, it's like, oh, sweet disappointment, how familiar you feel to me and how comfortable I am in your arms. And it's easy to be that kind of person. If we're always looking for the negative, We need to be hopeful. We serve a great God, and we serve a God who can do so many things beyond our ability to even comprehend. And that God is not somewhere in the distant looking down upon us, uncaring about what's going on and just waiting to see how it all turns out. Our God is active and He is alive, and He listens to our prayers and He responds to them. If He doesn't, why are we praying? And so we need to be grateful people, because as it says there, the writer Jeremiah says, I recall to my mind. What was gratitude? It was actively remembering. It was intentionally calling back to mind God's faithfulness and His goodness, just like the writer says here. His compassions do not fail. Our God is great, and His faithfulness is great indeed. And so it's not a feeling, it is indeed a choice. One of the times that we need to make that choice is also in the midst of good times, which seems a little counterintuitive. You would think that in good times, that's the times that we would be the most grateful. I contend that it's probably the time that we most often forget to be grateful. That God seemed to have this attitude as well in Deuteronomy chapter 8, that earlier in this chapter, He's telling them that He's bringing them into this land. And He kind of walks them very briefly through some of the things that had happened. He reminds them that He brought them out of Egyptian bondage, and that when they were in the wilderness, He tested them by withholding some things from them and having them go through some sorrowful times. He says He does that because He wanted to test them to see if their heart was truly devoted to Him and to see if they would truly obey Him when they come into this great land that He's given to them. Because He says in Deuteronomy 8 and verse 10 that when you have eaten and are full, then you shall bless the Lord your God for the good land which He has given to you. He tells them that intentionally, purposefully. He tells them deliberately, you remember to thank me for what I have given you, because I am giving you a land that is overflowing with milk and honey. This is a land of great possession. This is a land where you can be blessed for many, many generations if you obey me. I am giving this to you by a strong hand, bringing you out of Egypt, protecting you in the wilderness, even when you're going through difficulty, still preserving you. And now I'm bringing you into this land. And then after this verse, He begins to warn them, because what's going to happen is this. You're going to get into the land, and you're going to be receiving all these great gifts from me that I've given to you, and then you're going to forget me. And what a horrible statement that is. And when you read it, it makes you think, how on earth could the people forget God? Going out every day and just picking their bread up off of the ground. Every need that they had being met. Yes, the wilderness was tough, but what brought them there was their ingratitude and their lack of faith. And yet God still provided for them. Now He's given them this great land. On one occasion, it's nothing more than just standing out there or walking around this wall and then yelling and then witnessing the wall fall down, and God's going to give victories in such fashions as that. But He says, you're going to forget me. And it was true. We need to be intentionally grateful when times are good. Believe it or not, I think we're going through good times. Life is a mixed bag. It gives us good things and bad things along the way, and we choose the attitude we're going to have in facing them. But really, we're probably going through some pretty good times. That's why we complain about the smallest and minutest of the things that we should not be complaining about. Look at how much you are blessed with. Look at how great your life has been. If nothing else, simply because you are a child of God. That's how great your blessings are, that you are one of His. In Psalm 92, verses 1 and 2, and you can read through the Psalms and see so many of the Psalms that talk about giving thanks to God. Here it says, it is good to give thanks to the Lord and to sing praises to your name, O Most High, to declare your loving kindness in the morning and your faithfulness every night. It talks about deliberately and daily, that in the morning and in the evening, that this is a promised activity that we're going to participate in. That this is something I'm not just going to be thinking about, but I'm going to be proclaiming it. I'm going to be declaring it and talking about it to other people. That isn't this a great day that God has given to us? If you woke up and turned to your spouse and said, "This is a great day that God has given us, isn't it?" They'd probably say, "Are you okay?" Because it's not generally the way in which we speak to one another. But I believe the Scriptures teach us that we should be more willing to talk about how thankful we are. We're not shy about complaining. We don't hide our complaints from each other. We talk about them pretty freely. How often do we talk about and praise our God to one another? That we deliberately and openly speak of it to our coworkers, our family members, and those we come in contact with each day. Psalm 103 that was read for us, the first two verses again. Bless the Lord, O my soul, and all that is within me. Bless his holy name. Bless the Lord, O my soul, and forget not all his benefits. All that is within me. God was testing the people to see if they truly would serve him, that their heart was with him. And one of the tests of that was going to be whether or not they could just simply remember to give him thanks for what he had done to them. We need to intentionally acknowledge God's hands in all that we have. And also in hard times. It may be more difficult for us in hard times. In Romans 1 and verse 21, as we read this morning, although they knew God, they did not glorify him as God, nor were they thankful, but became futile in their thoughts. We also read from Luke 14 this morning. Verse 24 says that none of those people who were invited to the feast were going to taste of that supper because they were not thankful for God and the great supper that he was providing for them. That when we're going through hard and difficult times, it is a real test of who our allegiance belongs to. We, above all people, ought to find it very easy and very natural to fall to our knees and to be thankful that we can go to our God and ask him and give our petitions before his mighty throne. I've often wondered, how is it that people make it through life when they don't have anyone greater than themselves or greater than that doctor that they're talking to, or greater than that lawyer that they're dealing with, or greater than that king or president or whoever that they can appeal to? How do they make it through life when they don't have anyone who is any greater or better than I am? Because I know that I'm an utter failure, and I know I'm made of flesh, and there's only so much I can do. And that's all you have to appeal to? That to me is so sad, that they can't even bow in prayer knowing that a God in heaven is listening to them. That terrifies me. I don't understand that. But here we're told that people know who God is, but they don't thank him, nor do they glorify him. And because of that, their hard times become that much more difficult. Us as Christians, though, in the midst of hard times can give thanks because we also glory, it says, in our tribulations. Knowing that tribulation produces perseverance, and perseverance, character, and character, hope. The next verse says that hope does not disappoint. That we have something that is lasting and real because of the relationship that we have with our God and the gratitude even in the midst of what we are facing. Again, we're not thanking God because of the bad times, but we're thanking God in the bad times because he is there with us and he is still working for us. That even in sufferings, we have so many things that we can be thankful for. 2 Corinthians 4:16 through 18, Paul says, "Therefore we do not lose heart, even though our outward man is perishing, yet the inward man is being renewed day by day." And then notice our light affliction. That definitely changes or speaks to the necessity of changing the way we view things. Our light affliction, which is but for a moment, is working for us a far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory, while we do not look at the things which are seen, but at the things which are not seen. Because the things which are seen, he says, are temporary, but the things which are not seen, those are the things that Paul points out are eternal in nature. And that's what we look toward, and that's where our gratefulness stems from. Again, as we looked at this morning when we talked about Job, we looked at Job chapter 1. And in Job chapter 1, even after he was told that everything that he had, including his children, had been lost, he makes that great statement about, I came forth from the womb with nothing, I go back to the womb. Or from the ground with nothing, I go to the ground with nothing. There's nothing that I have on this earth that was not profit to me. He says, blessed be the name of the Lord. His own wife even, when she sees the affliction that he's going through, says, are you still holding on to your integrity? Curse God and die. And it may not be that she was just trying to trip him up and trying to ridicule him or anything much. It may have been that she was just tired of looking at him in such a horrible state and condition that she wants him to just be done with this, to have his life ended. Curse God and die. And he reminds her that that is a foolish thing that you're saying, that we are more than willing to accept good from the hand of God. Should we not also accept adversity? That's a cutting statement. I am more than willing for God to shower his blessings upon me. But adversity, hard times, difficult times, we may not be so willing. But as we've seen, that even in the midst of that, we can make the choice, the decision to be grateful, as Job was. Even in the midst of the most horrific of times and moments of even the deepest of pain, he was still there. Someone wrote that even in the midst of turbulent waters, truth and gratitude can rescue you from yourself and your runaway emotions. And what a true statement that is, that we need an anchor, and that's what gratitude can really give to us. There's a few things I wanted to point out as we bring the lesson to a conclusion of a practical nature. Some ways in which we can cultivate gratitude. One way, I believe, is actually preaching the gospel to yourself. We preach the gospel to other people because that is good news. It gives them hope in the midst of the darkest condition that a person can be in. They are spiritually dead, and they have the opportunity to be alive again because of God's grace and because of his mercy. These are some of the things I need to start telling myself as well. I need to be reminded that God's gospel, his truth, his good news is not just about being delivered from darkness and placed into the kingdom of the Son of his love, but also that God has not abandoned us once we're in that kingdom, and that he is walking by our side, and that he is with us along the way. I need to be preaching that message, not just reminding myself. I need to be preaching to myself. There are times where we need to be staring ourselves in the mirror and reminding ourselves of some of these things so that we do not forget these things. Be something probably good in the morning even. Pray with thanksgiving. Try to pray where there are no requests, but but thanksgiving to God. Make a list of those things that you might can pray to God for before you even go to him in prayer. I said this morning, it may be a good idea to keep a journal and to have that journal open so that when you begin your prayers each day, you can list those things that you were mindful of, that you purposely thought about, that you purposely remembered God's faithfulness, his goodness, and his blessings that he gave to you, and to pray those things when you're speaking to your God. Look for ways to show gratitude to God, but also one of the ways in which we show gratitude toward God is through service to others. You remember when Jesus talked about, when you did it to one of the least of these, my brethren, you did it to me? That's one of those things that shows that we truly do appreciate what God's done for us because we're sharing it with others. Look for ways to show your gratitude and just sending a card to someone and letting someone know that you were thankful for them. Letting them know that maybe something they said in that Bible class was meaningful to you, that verse that they gave to you in your moment of doubt or sorrow was something that gave you strength. Whatever it may be, look for ways to show gratitude for what you've been blessed with and the ways in which you trust in your God. We need to meditate on the Scriptures, that throughout the Psalms, there are so many Psalms that speak about thankfulness and gratitude. One of the things that you'll notice in your Bibles if you do a word study is many times where the word bless the Lord is a word that is also translated thank the Lord. Show gratitude, show appreciation to the Lord. Bless the Lord. Many times that's saying thank you to God. And so we need to meditate on Scriptures so we see God's faithfulness and learn how to do it. And for set a guard over your mouth. We need a guard that is quick to react. I asked the question this morning, and I want to repeat it tonight. What is our first reaction to things? Is it to complain, or is it to be grateful and thankful for it? It's almost like if you imagine giving your child a birthday present. And that child opens up that present, and it's something they asked for, but it's not the color they wanted. And they said, oh, it's the wrong color. Or as a parent, we say to our child, well, that's really good that you did that, but you did not do this. It's a way to crush a child's spirits real fast. We need to guard our mouths. The Bible is, from beginning to end, filled with so many warnings about how devastating our words can be to others. we may have been raised where we're used to criticizing and pointing out the things that weren't done right or could have been done better. But we need to guard our mouths in such a way that we're not expressing ingratitude, and that we don't acknowledge appreciation for something that is deserving of some appreciation. Guard your mouths. And then one last thing, make gratefulness that first reaction. Before you say anything, can you first find a reason to be grateful? Before you react, can you find a reason to be thankful? Sometimes it's easy. Somebody's done something for you and simply saying thank you. Other times it may not be that way. Part of guarding our mouths is making sure that gratefulness is going to be the first reaction, not the last. Don't wait until the conclusion of a matter to then decide whether or not you're grateful. Gratefulness is a state of being. It's not something where it's a reaction to things. So make that your first reaction. The question we'll leave with you tonight is this, is what will your choice be? As I said, gratefulness is not based upon feelings. It's based upon the attitude that we have cultivated. If I haven't cultivated that attitude, it's going to be really difficult for me to make it through life and have good relationships. God said that the relationship with Him was dependent upon His people, remembering and being grateful for what He had done. And we know that here on this earth, it is very hard to maintain a relationship with a person who is always negative. They always have something bad to say. They always have some kind of problem to talk about. I've heard it said before, don't ask people about their problems because they will tell you those things. I think it was Mark Twain, I may have the person wrong, but there was one who said that we shouldn't tell people our problems because half don't care and the other half think you deserve them. So we need to be very careful about the things that we say when it comes to complaining. But showing more gratitude makes it much easier to maintain good relationships. And so my question with you tonight is, what will your choice be? If there's something that we can help you with, if you need to be a Christian tonight, if you need to be baptized for the remission of your sins or to repent of anything and there's some way that we can help you, please let us know. As we stand and sing this song, won't you please come if we can help?